Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders. This is James Guzman. Thank you for joining me. I hope everybody had a great holiday season. I know I did. I've been working on my latest project, which is the San Miguel de Allende Vacations.com. It's vacation. So yeah, check that out if you get a chance. If you ever think about coming down to San Miguel, I've been working on vacation rentals lately, so I built this website, and it's got some relocation tour on there, other types of things, and I'm going to be adding to that. So yeah, it's San Miguel de Allende Vacation.com if you want to check that out. And other than that, been doing great. Recently went to the Meet the Masters event, which is from Jason Hartman, who actually invited me personally, and it was phenomenal. It was so great. I got to meet a lot of people. And what made it really convenient is that now, I didn't realize that they've built a bridge right within the Tijuana airport. So, I've been trying to avoid flying in and out of U.S. airports especially. It's just so much of a hassle and all that. So this made it really easy. I could actually fly from Leon. So, someone could pick me up right at the door, bring me to the airport of Leon, fly. It was only 3 hours, walk across the bridge, and it's almost like you're walking into the United States, so it's a lot easier to enter that way. And then you can get Uber and go wherever you want. So that made it a lot easier, especially, I only carried a carry-on with me. So, and they've got, all these things now. You can just check in with an app. You can have your boarding pass on your app. And as far as the conference goes, it was just a lot of great speakers. I'll explain basically what the idea was. So it was a real estate investment conference, and it was really kind of a straightforward way of a strategy that they recommend. And so that is in the beginning with your whole life insurance policy. So we've had on Carlos Laura in the past on the Borderless podcast, and he's explained what this infinite banking concept is. So basically, you get a whole life insurance policy, which is guaranteed to go up 4% each year. And then what you can do is you can use the money within your life insurance policy. You can borrow against your whole life insurance policy, and that's your money. So you're basically your own banker, and you use that money to then use that money as a down payment on a cash flowing investment. Okay, so real estate investment in this case. And then what happens is not only are you getting the 4% that's growing in the principal of your life insurance policy, but the interest that you're paying on the loan that you've borrowed is also going towards you, plus you're paying off the principal. So it's really, when you buy real estate, you can use that money as a down payment. You're paying yourself back the principal plus the interest of that's going to you, and also inflation is eating away at that debt, and it's very low, if not completely tax free. So very interesting strategy. And as far as what real estate they're choosing, they go to linear markets. Basically the idea is that you want to buy real estate investments not in these cyclical markets go up and down depending on the boom and bust and the business cycle. You want to choose boring markets. You probably don't want to live there, but that stay linear, have steady jobs and all that stay linear. For over decades, rather than big cities and things like that go up and down. So basically, you want to buy investment real estate in those areas. Usually, at least you want to get 1% of the total, 1% a month of the total amount of the real estate. So if you have a $100,000 property, you should be getting $1,000 a month in rent. That's the good measure that they use. And then, you probably don't want to live there. So then, what you would do is if you want to live in a cyclical market, which most people do, and then you'd rent there. So you buy in you buy or invest in linear markets that are specifically for investment and cash flow purposes, and then you can rent or live in cyclical markets if you'd like to do that. And so anyway, I think it's a great strategy. It makes sense, and they had all kinds of different vendors and people that could help you with your corporate structure and your your life insurance policies and all the different markets. They had several different market specialists that would sell turnkey properties that would manage them for you and everything. So it's very interesting. I think that I'll probably dabble in that in the future. But there was also all kinds of great speakers, and so if you get a chance, I would recommend going to it. Meet the Masters event. They have them each year. And so with this podcast, I met somebody there, and he was very interesting. And so I would really recommend listening to this podcast all the way through. I think we covered a lot of interesting topics. Goes along well with a lot that we talk about at Borderless Podcast. And this is not just a podcast. This is a video this time. So if you are listening to this in podcast form, you want to watch it in video, it is on YouTube. All right, so here's the podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. Borderless. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. And today I have on the line with me Naresh Vissa, and he is the founder and CEO of Krish. Is it Krish?
Yep.
Krish Media and Marketing, which is a full-service online and digital media and marketing agency. He has worked with leading publishers, media firms, and institutions such as CNN Radio, JP Morgan Chase, Everbank, the Institute of Energy Research, Houston Rockets, Houston Astros, the American Junior Golf Association, Agora Publishing, Stansberry Research, and others. He also has a #1 best-selling book, Podcastnomics, the book of podcasting to make you millions. He has a lot of other things that he's done, but I figured that was good enough to introduce him. So I had the pleasure of meeting him at the latest Meet the Masters event. And so thanks for coming on today.
Thanks a lot, James, and I'm glad that we connected at Meet the Masters. I think you and I have a lot in common.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that was a great event, wasn't it? It was a lot of fun.
Ton of fun, lots of like-minded people discussing real estate, entrepreneurship. It was actually, I went to 5 or 6 conferences last year. This was better than all of them, and this might have been the best conference I'd ever been to. So it was awesome.
Funny enough, I was talking to, on the Hero Investing podcast, and I said the same, and I meant it in that I've been to a lot of different conferences. Different ones have different aspects to them. Some of them are less practical, or whatever have to do with hobbies and this type of thing. But I really liked this one a lot. I mean, it was definitely in the top, if not the top, conference I've ever been to. I just thought there was a lot of people there, and they were the real deal. There was a lot of they really had a tapestry of people that can help you get set up in your wealth strategy, whether it's using whole life insurance and corporate laws and people to help you with the tax aspects, and then from all over the United States in different linear markets that you can acquire these real estate. We talked a lot about management and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of a just a real tapestry of good people that can help you put this all together. And I've been to a lot of conferences, and some of them are kind of like, kind of iffy. You're kind of like, I don't know about this guy. And a lot of conferences are like that, or they're trying to really hard sell you on some stuff. And I didn't see anybody like that I thought was, scammy or trying to shove something down my throat.
Yeah, it was. You bring up a good point in that it was meant for real estate was the basis of the conference, but then we branched out into the benefits of whole life insurance, which I, by the way, found out about maybe 4 or 5 years ago and got started in my mid-20s. And I'm really thankful that I did that, and I look forward to continuing with that. And I just got started in real estate last year. The conference really opened my eyes even more to the opportunities that exist within kind of slow, linear residential real estate investing. So incredibly beneficial for me. It's not just the investing part, but the lending part, because that was when I went into that conference, one of the biggest issues I had was lending. And do I pay cash versus taking out a loan? What are the benefits of taking out a loan? Interest rates are going up. What does that mean? How do I get a low interest rate loan? And so going and meeting people who had worked with clients like me was very beneficial. They were able to sit down, show me stuff, and make me feel very encouraged, because what I did last year, was just kind of blindly go on the internet, contact some people, and got back responses that were not very favorable or worthwhile to my long-term investing. And so the individual who threw it, Jason Hartman, he's been on your show before. You're going on one of his shows pretty soon. So he just has done a great job of basically doing all the work, identifying the people who aren't scam artists, and inviting them and sharing them with his network. So really, really awesome conference. It was in La Jolla, San Diego. And beautiful place, nice weather, great people. And I have no regrets about attending. It was all gravy.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody was really down to earth, I thought. I was amazed just how down to earth Jason is. I mean, he's always been so nice to me. It's just crazy. You've worked for all different types of, I mentioned before, Agora Publishing, Stansberry Research. I think many people that listen to this podcast are familiar with them. So you're familiar with all different types of asset classes. You also had an investment radio show, right, in the Dallas area, a very successful show there.
That was several years ago when terrestrial radio was still a medium that people listened to. Right.
So what is it about real estate? Now, since you're very familiar with all these different asset classes, I guess you at least find value in having some of your portfolio in income real estate. So what is it that you like about that, and what do you think that the place for real estate is in compared to other types of assets?
Well, it's a really good question because I started out with stocks. That's what I was kind of trained to analyze. I worked as an equity researcher. I worked on Wall Street for a short while. I went to business school, and the focus was on stocks, valuing companies, looking into companies' financials. And so that's really what I focused on early on because that's all I knew. But after losing a good amount of money, I was thinking, well, what else is out there? Now, while I was still in the stock mode, I was introduced by a mutual contact to an individual who ran at the time a small shop of life insurance products. And that individual, 4 or 5 years later, ended up sponsoring the event that we just went to and giving one of the keynote speeches. And so I actually bought my whole life insurance about 4 or 5 years ago. And I have no regrets about it because now, looking back, when he was explaining it to me, I just thought I was kind of young, I was naive, and I was just like, I was introduced by somebody who I trust and respect, and this just, it looks good, it makes sense. But now, moving, 5 years later, fast forward, the whole life insurance is gonna come in handy in my real estate investing, and so it actually, as far as getting loans go, the fixed rate interest that you get from the whole life insurance is going to really do a good job of keeping me solvent and also being able to put down a down payment, for example, on a home in the future, things like that. So to answer your question, though, what about real estate investing do I like? Like I said, I've done stocks, bonds, precious metals, whole life insurance, treasuries, cryptocurrencies, private equity, just done a lot of different types of investing. And so far, what I love about real estate investing is you are investing in income. So at least when you're investing in income properties, residential real estate, you know how much you're going to make every month. I know exactly, I bought my first property a couple of months ago. I know exactly how much I'm going to make next month off that property. Of course, there might be instances where something breaks, something's leaking, clog in the toilet or whatever, and you have to go fix them when those do happen. But for the most part, you can factor those costs into your calculations and you know essentially what you're getting. And if you're one of those day traders who loves the swings of the market, going, buying penny stocks and cryptocurrencies and seeing 70 to 80% swings, you might think real estate's a little too boring for you. At least residential income property real estate investing is too boring and not your cup of tea. But, I used to be one of those guys who liked the cryptos, who liked the the 80% swings, the hit your home run, try to make, $10,000 in one day. I used to be like that. And I guess you can call it maturity. I guess you can say also losing a lot of money and failing and feeling sad and depressed because you lost a lot of money. But real estate provides good returns. And if the price of the property appreciates, great. If it doesn't, well, who cares? Because in my case, I'm looking to hold properties essentially, I don't want to say forever, but for, 40, 50 years. And we'll be conservative and say 40 years. That's what I'm looking to do with real estate. And it's a great way to have passive income, but also when it comes to preserving one's wealth. When we talk about preserving wealth, we think about, just put in the S&P and just preserve it that way. But who knows what the S&P is going to do? It could completely tank. A lot of people say gold and silver are good wealth preservers. Put it into something physical like gold or silver. With gold and silver, I've run into my own issues with upkeep and storage, and it comes with its own issues with physical. With real estate, you're actually kind of doing a service because you have people living there who, living is an important part of life, and you're doing somewhat of a service by having people live there. And you're also making money at the same time by charging them rent. And the value of the home, like I mentioned, the chances of the S&P being higher than the chances of, a home going down to zero. Like a home can't go down to zero. At least it would take something extremely catastrophic for a home to go down to zero. Whereas a too big to fail stock, blue chip stock, we saw in 2008, 2009 that many of them did go down to zero. So I like that about real estate. It's safer, but if you're not about boring and slow and steady wins a race, then real estate may not be for you.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of stocks, I believe that the Dow just hit 26,000 today. So, yeah, if you want to jump in now, I guess you just throw the buy low and sell high out the window, because I don't think there's ever been a rally like this ever. And so, if you want to, just keep that in mind. I mean, this is crazy. Anyways, the way I look at it, what's that?
I want to add to what you just said, because while the Dow is up, way up, and it's gone nothing but up for the past, it's not just a Trump thing, but it's gone way up really since 2009. I mean, I'll say 2011. There was a huge pullback in 2011, but since then it's just been, again, linear. But cryptocurrencies. So a friend of mine got into cryptocurrencies about 2 weeks ago, and he got in close to a peak in some of these cryptos. And today, I don't know if you've checked, but
was it 11,000 Bitcoin?
Bitcoin touched about 11,000, and all the other cryptos have gotten completely, or most of the other cryptos have gotten completely hammered. I'm talking double-digit losses. And so, yeah, you can ride the wave of optimism and get in at new highs, which could end up being it could end up making you some money. But in my case, I've been burnt in the stock market. I've been burnt by cryptos pretty badly, and I've discovered real estate. And my investment philosophy moving forward actually is most likely going to be what I do have in stocks and cryptos, just kind of leave that there. But moving forward, focus more on real estate and whole life insurance, because they go hand in hand with each other. Yeah. And pretty much what you're getting with both of them.
Yeah, I like that strategy. And what I usually recommend to people in this line of thought, have you ever read the book Fail Safe Investing by Harry Brown?
I have not.
Okay, yeah, I really like that book. It's not very big. And what he basically talks about is, you should make money, make income the way you know how to make money. Whatever it is that you do, whether it's a job or your business or something, that's how you make money. And that's separate from how you save money. So, it could be that you're a really good speculator, in the market, a stock trader or crypto trader, whatever. But that's something you're doing. You're putting your labor in order to make money. You take that income out and you put it in long-term investments. and you balance them out each year. It's not something that's sexy or exciting that you want to put your long-term savings or your portfolio in. Normally it's 5 to 7% that you want to speculate with. So any of these speculative things that we're talking about, if you have a hedge fund or something, then you can speculate. Or if you want to use 5% of your portfolio, then you can do that. But you should not be putting your savings in highly speculative assets. That's just, you're going to go bankrupt. So, yeah.
And that's something that I think you shared with me when we, within minutes of meeting each other. That's something you shared. And I completely agree with what this Harry Brown says. To give you an example, I hear all the time of people who do have money, like athletes or people who, made it big somehow, in their job or whatever. And they do have the money. And what they do, they go around asking, where can I invest? What should I do to make more money? Where should I put this? And if we take an example, let's say, of an NFL football player who's getting towards the end of his career and he starts thinking about, just an NFL football player making millions of dollars a year, and he's looking at investments. What restaurant should I invest in? Because so many of them invest in restaurants and other kind of high failure private equity projects. Really, what I tell people,
I was going to say lately ICOs. You see all kinds of famous people. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what I tell people is the greatest investment you can make is in yourself. Absolutely. And what I mean by that is if you are an NFL football player, put the money in a high yield CD, put the money in, life insurance, put the money in real estate, and just focus on how you can get better as a player. Because if you get better on the field as a player, you're going to be rewarded for your work many, many times over of what you can make off of an ICO or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that countless times where some player, they go undrafted, they're not making much money, they put in the work, they try really hard, then they have one amazing season, and then they get rewarded with a multi-million-dollar contract, and they 8 figures, some even in the 9 figures. And so that same principle applies to people, where too many people are working their jobs and they're thinking, I need to find the next Google or Amazon or whatever, and they're essentially using the money, what little is left over after paying down all their expenses, into speculating in these investments. And some of them can go up. Some of them can go up to millions of dollars. But the bulk of the time, you're going to lose a lot of money. That's what happened to me. I've lost a lot of money in the stock market. I've lost a lot of money in other places. And I just wish that I was introduced. I'm happy that I was introduced to whole life insurance when I was in my mid-20s. But I wish that I shouldn't say was introduced, but that I took real estate more seriously when I was in my mid-20s. That way I could have bought my first property and, done all my research back then. But hey, you live and you learn.
Yeah, that's right. And that kind of goes on to also with, somebody that you work with, Patrick Donahoe. I remember during his speech, he was talking about the human capital balance sheet. And that I think that goes a lot with what you're just saying as far as building your own human capital. We have our financial assets, whether we own business, have, equity in a business, we have precious metals, we have real estate, and then we also have our human capital, which is our own knowledge, our own, the assets that we can bring to value to other people. And I think that especially in, within our generation or younger, this is going to be very important because right now things are going pretty smoothly, but I think that definitely in our lifetimes we're going to see a lot of volatility. And no matter what happens with the fiat currencies and economies collapsing, whatever it is, if you have some sort of human capital that you can bring with you, and that also includes your network. The way I look at it, you can get back on your feet. Say that there is some catastrophic event and you get wiped out or whatever. If you have knowledge, that you can help people with, and people and you have a good reputation, then you can turn around and get back on your feet. So I think that's especially good for volatile times, which I predict that we'll probably have within the next few decades. Well,
I want to actually focus on Patrick Donahoe, who was one of the keynote speakers and CEO of Paradigm Life. I want to focus on one of the things that he talked about, which you touched on, which is in the balance sheet, you do have your assets and you have your liabilities. And in the case of the financial assets and liabilities, we all know that. If you've been taking a business course, if you've taken an accounting course, if you've read any of these financial books, you understand what that means. But when it comes to our own inner assets and liabilities, it goes beyond the life insurance, the real estate, the stocks, the bonds, the savings. It goes beyond that. And so really what it delves into is, what are our life assets and our life liabilities? In the case of assets, James, I think you and I are kind of in the same boat, where we're pretty location independent, and I would say for the most part, not 100%, but we can live life on our own terms. That is a huge asset that the average person in the United States does not grow up thinking about and does not have. I can tell you, we both, I know your network, James, but I don't know everybody. But in my network, it's an incredibly rare quality to have, to be able to essentially just pick up, move wherever you want, not really have to worry about money. Yeah, you still got to pay bills and stuff, and you got to make money to pay your bills, but not really worry about, finding the next job, or is my boss going to fire me, or, all of that. Like I said, yes, I have clients to please. And if my company doesn't perform, then we'll get fired as a vendor. But it's not this idea of dressing up, waking up early in the morning, dressing up, showing up to work, putting on a smile on your face, and working a job that you absolutely hate. And so the idea of a personal asset, a spiritual asset, if you want to call it that, or a mental asset, is, for example, living life on your own terms, being able to get up whenever you want, create your own schedule. If you don't want to do something, then saying no and not doing it. That's a huge asset. And it's something that ties into the network, not just your business network, but your personal network, and being able to have good relationships, being able to continue to innovate, because as when you're out on your own, you have innovation. It's constant. It's not like one innovation works out and be happy for the rest of your life. You got to constantly be innovating. And so that's one thing Patrick really kind of explained in his presentation. It's we have all these financial assets, savings and bonds, stocks, life insurance, real estate, cryptocurrencies, whatever. These are all the financial assets that are on paper, but we have these intangible assets, which is really what creates the happiness in our lives. The other things help, but, and James, this, there are countless people who are unhappy, who have money in the bank, but they're unhappy for various reasons, family reasons, loneliness, or because they're always competing against somebody. There's always going to be someone better than them, and they're always competing against that, or not being comfortable in their own skin or with them. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why people can't be happy. I'm not saying that you're the happiest person alive. I'm not saying I'm the happiest person alive, and we've found out the secret sauce to happiness. But what I am saying is that it's important to think about these kind of off-balance sheet, intangible assets that are so important to our lives and to the wellness of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. Another thing that I really liked about the conference was John Burns. They gave everybody this book. I've been reading it. Well, first of all, his speech was really great, and a lot of great stuff in this book. If people want to look at it, it's called Big Shifts Ahead, and they evidently put thousands and thousands of hours into this book on the demographic changes, and it's a lot of things in here that I had not thought about, so I'd recommend that if people are into it. Is there what did you take away from that, or were there any other speeches or anything like that, like some big takeaways that you had?
Well, like I said, the real estate portion of the conference was, because I'm new, very worthwhile to me, especially when it came to on the lending side. But one speaker who was not real estate related was the founder of UGG Boots, Brian Smith, and his story was somewhat similar to Patrick's in that it was non-real estate related, but it talked about failure, it talked about life, it talked about relationships, it talked about
hanging in there and not giving up if you truly do believe in something. And so one aspect that really stuck out to me of that speech was he started UGG Boots. For the first 5 years. They barely made any money. He barely made any money. Then he was removed as a partner in the business. He basically got diluted out. Some crazy events happened. One of his partners died. He inherited his life insurance policy or the payout, and ended up buying out the rest of the stakeholders and took majority ownership of the business. But he went for 5 or 6 years without generating a profit. And even though he showed growth in maybe 2 or 3 years, it's like sales dip back down. And his roller coaster of a story is really applicable and relevant to all entrepreneurs out there. If an entrepreneur comes to you and says that, oh yeah, I started this business and it took off from day one, and I made so much money, the business made so much money, it was the easiest thing ever, they're lying to you, guarantee you. They're absolutely lying. It takes a certain type of personality to just kind of go out on your own and believe that your ideas or your mission is essentially better than what's being currently offered out there in the marketplace.
Right.
And it takes a lot to do that. It takes a certain type of personality. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but any entrepreneur can tell you this. But with John Burns, there was one specific element which I touched on earlier, and that was when basically he thought he was going to shut down. His manufacturer said that they were going to stop making the boots. I think his distributor said they were going to stop distributing the boots. It just wasn't profitable to them anymore. And he called his stakeholders and said, I'm shutting down the business, soon, like within the next week or so, or whatever it might have been. And he was just lying on the floor, which is something that I think many entrepreneurs do when things go wrong. It's just you somehow end up on the floor and you can't really move out of there. And so he was lying on the floor and just watching TV, couldn't walk, started crawling into bed. And while he was doing that, he was married during this time. He probably still is, I'm not sure. But his wife said, basically, stop being basically said, stop being such a bum and a loser, get your behind up and walk to bed. And, there's more to life than just sheepskin boots and money and this and that, stop being such a freaking baby. And that just kind of, I think it's important that investors, entrepreneurs, they realize that, to begin with, we didn't go into it for the money. That's pretty obvious. We did go into it because of the sheepskin boots, because we believe that the sheepskin boots are better than the leather boots. And when the market tells us that the sheepskin boots are not better than the leather boots, it is a huge shot to the ego. And in the case of Brian Smith, he said, for 2 or 3 days, and then I just moved on with my life. And a manufacturer ended up saying that they will manufacture things, and things turned around, and then UGG Boots became $1 billion brand, $1 billion plus brand. So I think this ties in again to the intangible assets and the intangible assets that we have personally, of trying to just be at peace with ourselves and just staying focused, staying dedicated, staying positive, and continuing to innovate and tweak and doing things that hopefully will work out in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there was a lot of good speeches. Also, I thought that, what was her, Danielle
DiMartino Booth.
DiMartino Booth, yeah, that was kind of a lot. She's been doing the circuit a lot. Probably a lot of people have heard her in some podcasts and stuff. She's a very compelling speaker, I'll tell you that much. But so that was an interesting speech. So was there anything else that you wanted to go over, some takeaways from the conference? Before I wanted to ask you about some online marketing things as well.
Yeah, well, the conference overall, I recommend that your listeners start listening to Jason Hartman's podcast.
Sure.
It's called Creating Wealth. I've been involved with it for 5 years now. Jason Hartman, full disclosure, has been a client of mine. He does a really good job. The conference was a conference that Well, it was something I had never been to before, which was it brought together a real community of like-minded people. I mentioned I went to 5 or 6 conferences last year, and it did not, or none of them had the community that this one had. It's like people went there, they listened to a couple of speakers, they went back to their hotel rooms, went to sleep. But here it was like people wanted to network, they wanted to hang out, they wanted to go to lunch, they wanted to go to dinner, they wanted to get to know each other. And it's largely because of the community that Creating Wealth podcast has built. So props to that, and from all walks of life too. I mean, every ethnicity, race, color imaginable, ages. The conferences I went to last year were like 70 years old plus. I mean, it would be hard to find anybody under the age of 35 at these things. But at Jason's, you had 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, all the way up to 75-year-olds. People coming with their grandchildren, people coming with their kids. So it was extremely diverse, and like I mentioned, the diversity was it hit kind of every ethnicity, every race, color, but also hit every political ideology as well. I mean, you had communists, socialists, capitalists, libertarians.
There are communists in there?
Well, they were probably hiding in the closet, but there were definitely a few socialists there. You had pro-Trump, anti-Trump. I mean, you had all sorts of people, and just to bring everyone together and talk about real estate, talk about personal finance, talk about entrepreneurship and self-improvement, it was a really, really good sight to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I wanted to move on to that. So, you said, Jason is your client. You do have, this media company that you've helped a lot of people out with. So I wanted to talk to you about that. You also have the book Podcastnomics. And so you help people, marketing with their podcast and putting all this stuff together. And, obviously you've done a good job with him. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. I thought maybe we could start out with podcasting specifically. I'll tell you, doing my podcast, there's been a time, I was doing it every week for a while. And then I kind of, stopped, and because it was taking a lot of my time and stuff like that. But when I go and I see, things like this conference, and you see all the people there, there's 400 people there who paid at least $1,000 to go see it, and it just shows the power of the podcast. Because sometimes I forget how many people are listening to my podcast. It's easy to, forget the power of that. And, that whole conference was pretty much just through his podcast, So that kind of motivated me, to think I need to be more serious about putting out content and stuff like that. But so I wanted to ask you about podcasting, because a lot of people, they think, what's up with the podcasting thing? How do you make money with a podcast? And they don't understand what role it has in marketing. So when you talk to a client, how would you put, just specifically about podcasting, where would you put that in someone's mix of, marketing? And, to answer that question, how do you make money with a podcast?
Well, there are really 3 primary revenue drivers within podcasting. Number 1 is the podcast serving, and this is the most popular reason, and I think the most effective one, the podcast serving as a lead generator to sell an existing product. In the case of Jason Hartman, he has a podcast which is about real estate, and he's selling the audience real estate. The end goal is to sell them real estate, because that's how he makes his money. So that's the number 1 thing. It's having an existing product or service, and you're using the podcast to drive traffic and listenership, and then you sell them that product or service. Number 2 is the old school media model of advertising. Advertising is a dying breed. If you can get sponsors and advertisers, great. You're ahead of 99% of the game. But nowadays, with big data, with improved technology, advertising is not what it was in the 90s. You would have sponsors just throw, X amount of dollars for an annual sponsorship, and then they would come back a year later and not really have any data with them and see if they'll just go off of gut. Nowadays, you can run a campaign for a month or 2 months or 3 months. You run the campaign, you can target, you can see what your actual return is and quantify it to a T. As a result, that's really disrupted the advertising industry, and it's hurt advertising revenue across the board. That's why the traditional local TV stations, newspapers, magazines, they've gotten completely slammed by it, because now the advertisers know, oh, there just aren't that many people reading, paper newspapers or paper magazines anymore. It's not worth it. And they can track that. So anyway, the number 2 revenue generator is advertising. Number 3 is paid content. So coming out with a paid version of the podcast where people can subscribe on a monthly basis, an annual basis, and they get access to special, unique content that they wouldn't get in the free version. So I helped start the Stansberry Radio Network way back in 2011. And this was kind of the 3-pronged approach that we utilized, where we were making tens of thousands of dollars a month off of advertising. We were using their podcasts to sell their existing products, which were investment research related. And then also we came out with a subscription paid podcast that people had to subscribe to, and they got access to the various content and shows in that sense. Now, going back to the first revenue driver, using it as a lead generator, you can get very creative with that. So in Jason's case, he used the podcast not just to sell real estate, but to sell conference tickets for his conference. And then at the conference, he again tried to sell people on buying real estate. So you can get very creative. There are many offshoots of these 3 revenue drivers, but these are the 3 primary ways that you can monetize a podcast. And it's something that every podcaster should think about before they even start their podcast. And that's what I try to tell my clients. Think about these 3 revenue drivers. And then we also help clients not just with the strategy and monetization aspect, but we help them get the podcast up and running, the editing, the production, the website, the syndication online, the hosting. I mean, all that. We get them up and running, the equipment, we train them, we coach them on how to do it, the artwork, iTunes, logo, etc. We do all that, and then we actually produce it for them as well. If they want to interview guests, we'll book guests for their shows, given their niche. We'll consult them on how to take the podcast to the next level, etc. So it's a full service kind of podcast production process that we offer.
Yeah, and I would also add in another one, which would be affiliates. I think probably the way I look at it, the best thing you could do is the first revenue driver that you were talking about. Have your own product or service or whatever that you're doing. If you don't have that, another option is to get affiliates in your niche that you can, then you don't have to do any work at all. So that's kind of nice. And what I would recommend is that people get high paid affiliates, because there's a lot of affiliates, so say for instance, in Amazon, you can recommend Amazon books, but you get hardly any money. I mean, you got to have millions of people buying in order to make a living doing something like that. So it has to be, if you're going to have affiliates, have a few like higher end things that you can make a good amount on each sale is how it's going to work.
Yeah, so I should add kind of a 1A to that, selling your own existing product, and that is selling somebody else's product, which is what affiliate marketing is. So if you're interviewing a guest, for example, and they have their own product or service, sell their product or service and work out a deal so that you get a good cut of that. That should be at least 50%.
Yep.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not just selling your own product or service, but selling somebody else's. And again, Jason does that because Jason's not selling his real estate. He's selling inventory that's owned by other investors, that's being brokered by other brokers. So kind of similar idea.
Yep. Great. And I think a lot of people are familiar with, that listen to this, are familiar with Agora and Stansberry. So what was your experience, working with them? Did you like that?
I still do work with them in various different franchises within Agora, which includes Stansberry and several, they now have, I think, some 30 to 40 different franchises Agora Publishing does. They're such a large company. I think they're close to $1 billion. So, yes, I still do work with these individuals or these companies and individuals. And that's my experience doing that is what actually jump-started not just my company and my career, but also jump-started my innovation and jump-started me mentally, which was ideating, being able to think of things and navigate the online and digital marketplaces. Without my experience there, I would probably be working a corporate job at some bank or consulting company and probably be looking to get out, but not have anywhere to go. That's honestly what I would be doing right now, because that was my only other option. And a lot of my friends who went into those roles from graduate school, they either got out within 3 years or they're trying to get out now, because our generation, let's face it, James, is we can't stay at one job forever like our parents did. We're not focused enough to do what our parents did. It's all about now, smartphones, swiping left and right on smartphones, and shortcuts and texting, and the idea of the way things used to be is just completely outdated. It's archaic now. Mm-hmm. So, like I mentioned, they really, the Agora folks really, really gave me an opportunity to learn about the space and to teach me and train me. Not so I could leave, but I ended up, kind of giving up that corporate lifestyle and switching to a lifestyle where I'm more at home with myself and can be creative and service many different people, like what Patrick Donahoe was built up, work, and build a career, build a business. And, who knows, maybe 2 years from now, James, the market completely dries up. I lose all my clients. I'm not making much money. Or I'm not making enough money and I have to go back and work a corporate job. Well, hey, I'm happy that I spent 5, 6, 7 years doing what I did and building up those intellectual assets, because I know they're going to serve to stand me well in the future, whether I do go back and get a corporate job, or I continue to ideate and write my books, start businesses, buy businesses, partner in businesses. It's something that gave me an education that I would have never, ever gotten anywhere else. And it's essentially, if you can get educated and you're paid to get educated, that's the best. And if you walk around asking for, how many of these kids with student loans, they're saddled with all this debt because they were supposed to get an education, and now they have all this debt and they have no education, they have no skills, and they're screwed. Yeah. So in my case, every day is a learning experience. Every day is different, and that's what I love about it. And I'm just thankful. Going back to the whole intangible side of things, I'm thankful for really everything. I'm thankful for the experiences I've had, the travels that I've made, the connections and network and contacts that I've built, the projects that I've worked on and been able to trademark my name on. Just so much to be thankful for, and most importantly, health. I'm thankful for my health. It's something that I can focus more on because of my lifestyle. And without good health, it's impossible to do any of this stuff. It's impossible to go to a conference, hop on a plane, cross country, go out, meet people. It's just absolutely impossible. So these are all areas that are part of those intangible assets that people need to think about and just be thankful for and work and improve on them.
Right. Well, you're essentially location independent, right? You have your own business, and the investments and stuff that you have. What you would describe yourself as being location independent, right?
I would describe my business as being location independent. Mm-hmm. So when I moved down here, I didn't have any clients down here. I live in Tampa, Florida, by the way, on a beach. So I'm looking out my window right now, and it's nice and sunny. I can see some people outside on the beach just kind of running around. I see the water. I see the palm trees. Yeah. But you're right. When I moved down here, I was location independent. And a good chunk of my clients, actually, because I moved down here, was kind of doing my own thing, and people just kind of heard about me, and I got more involved in the community and started getting clientele in the area. But that's not why I moved here. Tampa is not the most industrial city out there. Not even, it's very different lifestyle and culture. But I am location independent. I just need my computer, my phone, and that's about it. Computer and phone and internet, and I can essentially grow my business, work on my business, service our clients, and do most of what I need to do.
Yeah, and then that great. I mean, that alone is such a like an amazing part of it being it because me being here in Mexico, my life is, I would say, like, whenever I go back to the States, I get such a shock at the price of things. So like, especially like where we're at La Jolla.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it's like,
you probably spent more money in those 3 days than you've spent in the last 4 months combined.
Right. And the thing is, I'll go to a nice, like, there's nice 5-star restaurants here. It's not like I'm bumming it, only eating taco stands or something. But, you can go to a nice 5-star restaurant, get, drinks and all that for seriously like 1/5 the price, 1/6 the price. And so being location independent, sure, you can go in and go to conferences like this and network, but you can cut down your expenses so much. I mean, it's especially like living somewhere where you don't need a car.
Oh yeah.
For me, that's something that I'm just so, since I've been out of the States for like 10 years, not having a car, when I go back to the States, it's like, that's a huge line item,
the car insurance, the health insurance. I mean, now you can you go, if you need to go to a doctor, you go in, and the healthcare is much, much cheaper there. It's probably direct to patient.
Yep.
The idea of tipping probably isn't a thing there. I know in many countries, tipping is just like,
less,
what is this? Why are you giving me this extra money? So not that tipping is a huge expense for people in this country, but still, that's just an example. Then the idea of inflation may not be as big a problem in some of these countries. So yeah, you're absolutely right that you come back to the United States and you're like, holy crap, Ubers cost so much, and the food, the restaurants, the 5-star restaurants, the 4-star restaurants, even the fast food these days. I mean, you can't walk out without paying $10 at some of these fast food places.
Yeah, right.
And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Things are.
And what I think is, that's such a benefit, especially if you're trying to get out of the rat race. I feel like that's like one of the first things you have to do. If you're going to keep your position or your career, or whatever it is, then you got to try to make yourself remote and go somewhere that's more affordable, because, it's about lowering your expenses, right? You want to have your passive income covering your expenses. I remember one of the videos that they played for somebody's 5-year plan at this conference. Their goal was they had to get over their expenses, and their expenses were $14,000 a month. I mean, that's a lot of expenses. So, that's going to take a long time, and so if you can, lower your expenses, to 1/5 of that, then you're going to get out of the rat race a lot quicker, and then you can concentrate on, your passive investments and stuff like that, and building your portfolio, and what, instead of just running the rat race. So I think that's really an important part of the puzzle.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and part of the reason why I moved down to Florida and Tampa Bay specifically is because I was living in socialist. I don't want to call martial. Actually, there was martial law for a few days there, but I was living in socialist Baltimore, Maryland, and it's one of those cities. It's cheaper than Washington D.C., but it's not very cheap. Very kind of backwards political principles. You get taxed on literally everything, anything and everything, and it wasn't. It's like the taxes were going to nothing, because it's not like the roads were nice. It's not like the government or the city hall was led by good people, or they were doing good things to improve the city. It's like the city kept getting worse and worse and worse. The schools kept getting worse and worse and worse. So it's like, why am I being taxed up the wazoo, and I'm getting nothing in return? There's complete waste. So that's part of the reason why I moved out of there. Moved down to cheaper Tampa, Florida. Safer Tampa, Florida, which is even more importantly. But you're right in that there are places even cheaper and safer than Tampa overseas, at least cheaper overseas. And so if you want to do that, by all means, go ahead. You and I know several people, have several close connections with people who moved out of the United States for good. They uprooted their family, and they're saving a lot more money living in places like Mexico, Georgia, Indonesia, Thailand. And so if you want to do that, by all means, go ahead. Definitely go do it.
Yeah, it's like, for me personally, the way I look at it, there's pros and cons for everywhere. I just find when I'm in the States, I end up, I'm working a lot to pay my bills. And to be quite honest, I'm not even enjoying my free time as much. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of, it depends on the individual, what you like to do, what freedoms you like to take advantage of. Different places on this earth have different types of freedoms you can do in some places, you can't do in others. And I just enjoy my free time here more than I do, even though it's much less. So.
Yeah, it's tough, man. A friend of mine who I play tennis with, his mother unfortunately got cancer and passed away, and he was just looking back on her life, and he said that she couldn't really live her life because she would wake up early in the morning and she'd go to work, working some job. She was an immigrant, and she would spend all day working just because she had to make enough to pay her bills and take care of her kids and all that. And so she basically spent her life doing that, and there was never really a time to enjoy and to do stuff with the money because she was always in that rat race. And so he said, it's just for so many people in the United States, it's so difficult to live a life. It's very hard, and money certainly has to do with it. We talked about the intangible assets. We talked about, entrepreneurship and, going through months where you literally make zero. I'm not saying money is not important at all and, to become a homeless person, but it's just it's all about building up yourself, building up your skills. I think we live in a skills-based economy now. Gone are the days of our parents' generation where you could just go to college and because you had that degree, you can walk into any place, get a job, and stay at that job for 50 plus years. That's gone. Got rid of that in 2008, 2009, that idea and that culture. Now the oil and gas industry is going through that same transformation. And I expect there to be that the next recession that hits this country, the United States, is going to force every industry to go through that transformation of it's no longer about where you go to school, what's on your resume. It's all about what can you bring to the table and what can you do to provide value immediately.
Yep.
That's what it's going to become about. Right now, more and more companies are doing that. I mean, I see it on the ground level when I'm talking to potential clients. It's, hey, what can you do for us that somebody at our company can't do or isn't doing very well, or that nobody is doing? And so I'm already seeing it at the ground level, and it's going to apply.
All right. So we had a little internet disturbance there, but that's all right. We're back, and we've run a little bit long anyway. So I wanted to respect your time, and if you can, just let people know about what you're doing, what websites to go, and plug away.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. If people want to get on my free newsletter, which really talks about online and digital business tips and tricks, go to my website, nareshvissa.com. Get on my newsletter. And if you're interested in our services, our online and digital agency services, design, copywriting, podcasting, book publishing, etc. I mean, we offer it all. But hit up krishmediamarketing.com, KRISH, mediamarketing.com. And you can check out all of my books on online and digital topics. Just go to Amazon, type in my name, Naresh Vissa, and you can check all that out.
Yep. All right. Great. Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming on. It was great talking to you. Great meeting you. And I'll talk to you soon.
You too, James. Take it easy.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.